You
It
got a kid
is.
who's 8 years old with an iPhone. They ain't no telling what they done seen, or
They
even
can
they
find
haven't seen.
anything, right?
Big facts. Or even let's say you're an adult who, you're a lot more responsible. You're a lot more, conservative with what you allow your kid to have access to. What about
Mhm.
their classmates?
I am of the opinion that this thing spits out, you hold it, it's tiny. It doesn't have the understanding, it doesn't have the skills, it doesn't have the context, but it is a whole person.
Okay.
That's a human. And that human, with all the luck and nurturing and needs, will one day become somebody like you and I that can hold this kind of conversation as an adult. It's that awareness of you and I, as intelligent, as well spoken, as funny or not as we are, we started that way,
Right.
right? So you have to recognize this tiny bundle of joy, if that's what it is, will become a whole person and has to be treated as a whole person.
Sure.
It's not an object, it's not a doll. You don't play dress up, you know. They don't have the ability to tell you they do or don't consent with something because they don't understand what consent is and because they don't have the language to tell you.
Okay.
So, like, those are things that are still owed to it. So, a child, even in the position of not being able to communicate needs or desires, still deserves the level of respect that an adult human being deserves. They're
Sure.
not any less worthy of respect. And so that changes the way that you interact with a child. Because if you see them as like a hierarchy and like they're lower than you, that interaction changes, which is why we end up with a lot of these abusive situations where like a kid doesn't know that there's something going on here that isn't okay. They just know they don't like it or that it confuses them, right?
Right.
And they have no higher understanding to be able to consent or not consent, which is why we have laws against child sex and all that kind of stuff, is
Right.
because they don't have the capability. They deserve the respect of, but they don't
Mm-hmm.
have the capability to choose.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm still really shook by that news article. I had not heard that, and it's really upsetting. But
My bad. Sorry, I didn't mean to shake you. That
no, it sets the tone on this because it is a big topic and it's easy to laugh at, and we will. But
Yeah, we will.
we will. We're not going to lie to anyone here. We're going to laugh at this. Well, it's
Another
laugh
grain of
or
salt, and
cry.
another
So
forethought. I am a terrible human being. No, I'm not. I'm perfect. I will laugh. No, I'm kidding. I'm definitely gonna laugh, but I don't think I'm a terrible human being. But there will be moments, especially down the line in this podcast, where um, there will be moments where we need to laugh, just so we don't get bogged down into how heavy and how dark and how weird life can get. Um,
yeah,
so that said, if this is a topic, um, and we'll try to keep it light, but if this is a topic that you don't want to hear or you think that you'd like to tune out on this one, by all means, please do. And hopefully we'll catch you on the next one. But if you want to stick around and, have this talk with us, we do encourage that as well.
yeah. So the perspective has to come from, for me, as a not parent. When we communicate with kids, we're teaching them always.
Okay.
100% always. When we communicate with kids, they're learning something, whether we want them to learn that thing or not, which is why you go to the grocery store and they point at a block of cheese and instead of saying cheese, they say shit. It's,
What?
this is, I,
Wait, what kid is pointing at cheese and saying shit?
there was a story. It must have been a Reddit story or something on the internet once that I read here. Well, it's that thing where like a kid watches like mom pulls the cheese block out of the fridge and then drops it and says shit, and so the kid associates
Ah,
cheese with shit, right? So
okay,
like
there it is.
it's that kind of thing where like you don't intend it, but kids are fucking smart, right? Like they pick up on shit, like they connect those two fucking dots. And that goes for, I think, kids. We don't give them enough credit. I think they become aware of sex a lot sooner than, at least in the United States, we give them credit for,
Hmm.
depending on what their situation is. So like I was a really sheltered, raised sheltered Catholic kind of child. you know, I remember very distinctly the moment where I stood in church and realized that all the people around me were married couples with children, which meant that all of them fuck. Like, I really remember that moment. Like, it was just a wild, like, so like sex was not something that really came into the picture for me. But I had a friend who had experienced trauma as a child, sexual trauma as a child. And
Okay.
so it was necessary to teach. And I didn't understand, I didn't know what had happened to them. But I knew that an understanding of what sex was something that happened in that household and didn't happen in mine.
Right.
Um, and it becomes this thing of like, kids are smarter than you give them credit for. And the
Mm.
ways we teach them about sex, the actual D and the P action, starts way lower than that. I'm a
So
linguist. Sorry, you go ahead.
no, well, you brought up something that I was going to use as sort of pivotal to my point.
Mm,
You brought up like when kids are or and how they're exposed to it, right? Because my initial
mhm,
point was going to be, um, it depends on when they have access to such a thing. Like,
right.
I remember, like after I graduated high school, or like I was in the military at this point, and I'm learning that kids are in, even when I was in high school, I'm like, kids are in middle school doing this shit behind the locker, behind like the bleachers and stuff. And I'm
Yep.
like, when I was in middle school, it wasn't even like really a thought for real. Or like kids that are
Mhm,
even in the fourth and fifth grade. I'm like, whoa, wait a
mhm,
minute. So it's sort of one of those weird ball games where you can't say a random age. Okay, hey, at the age of 16 or 15, it's appropriate to start talking then, because
right.
God forbid, someone like your friend or a lot of the women who are in my life who have had a traumatic experience, or even the guys who've had a traumatic experience
Mhm,
earlier, then you sort of got to have that conversation then. Um,
mhm,
that's a weird one because I don't know if there's a certain age or time frame. In an ideal scenario, I would like to say 15, 16, 17.
puberty,
Yep,
right?
right around that mark there where
Mhm,
maybe you've touched yourself, maybe you've not, or maybe you're just having these weird feelings and you're like, yo, I think I kind of something got warm, or
right,
why am I waking up like this? Like,
right,
I
right.
would like to think then, but it's such a weird thing now. And then once again, there's the internet, and that's a whole nother shit show in and of itself.
It
Where
is.
you
It
got a kid
is.
who's 8 years old with an iPhone, they ain't no telling what they done seen, or even
They
if
can
they
find
haven't seen
anything, right?
big facts, or even let's say you're an adult who you're a lot more responsible, you're a lot more conservative with what you allow your kid to have access to. What about
Mhm.
their classmates?